10 things that separate great leaders from average ones.
It doesn't happen by accident. You have to be intentional.
There's a difference between people who say they're not afraid to fail and people who are actually not afraid to fail.
That's the way you have to live.
I need you to help me in areas that I can't do on my own.
My Achilles heel is probably that I want to say yes to everything.
Great leaders, they're inspired, not intimidated by other people's successes.
Whose problem is it? Is it God's, yours, or theirs?
Well, Happy New Year.
Yes.
So glad to have you back on Talking Church. It's not been a long time. I feel like usually I say it's been so long, but it has been long, only a few weeks since the last episode.
I felt guilty last time, so
yes.
I've made myself more accessible.
Exactly, but it's a new year now, and people are excited, and I want to talk to you about 10 things that separate great leaders from average ones. These are things that successful people do, that you've been around a lot of successful people. I'd like to think you are one. You're successful.
Am I supposed to check? Go, I do that one. Yeah. I do that one. Let you know which ones I don't.
You can if you want to, but I want you to react to them, share thoughts. We kind of came up with some of these together, and some of these I came up with on my own. But the first thing is successful people, they do the same things every single day. What is your reaction to that? Are the things you do every single day?
I remember seeing that, and years ago. By the way, I haven't seen your list. Just so people know.
I asked you thoughts about it, like what were your things, but we were swimming in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
And you were kind of focused on Beckham.
It was a family vacation. I was with my grandson and my two sons and their wives, but mostly focused on my grandson.
Yeah.
So you can even see I forgot to mention my wife. She was there too, but I was focused on my grandson. So, but you didn't tell me the list.
No,
you didn't even say, oh, I'll put that on the list.
No.
And I don't even think we talked about it for more than a minute or two. So anyways, first time I saw that successful people do the same things over and over again, I was like, really? And I wanted to know why. And I read something about, even down to wardrobe, why certain people say, I'm always going to wear a black t-shirt, jeans, these shoes, that's all I'm going to do. They want to not have a decision to be made because it's on autopilot. They want things that don't matter to them very much, because some people would say picking out my outfit is the most important thing, and I'm going to take the longest amount of time and do it. But successful people are like, I started asking around. I started finding out, wait, they have limited number of outfits they wear. They have the same breakfast. This is fascinating to me. And I started to realize I'm in that spot now where it's like, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a protein bar, I'm going to have a coffee, and I'm going to get going. And I don't want any other decisions. Now that's when I'm at my house. When I'm out and about, I don't say I'm traveling with a protein bar.
But some people do.
But some people do.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing, and we've hosted people that are like, this is my breakfast every day. I never vary. And this is what I do. And so then they do the same thing every day. Like I remember John Maxwell, he said, I write every day. I'm like, every day? He's like, every day for 20 minutes, I write every day. I'm like, even at your fundraiser right now, we're at the fundraiser. You have 100 people here that you're hosting. He goes, every day. So there is something about the every day, and they keep it simple and they eliminate guesswork. And I'll say this honestly, that's what surprised me about me. I'm like the opposite, I do most things every day, but if you were to push me, I would say, no, I'm not as disciplined. I mean,
but I think that there are things that are natural to some people that they don't think, of course I do that every day. And it's just things that people don't think about. Like, I do my devotions and I pray every day, and it's just kind of a given. Whereas to some people, that's not a given. And so the things that are settled for you, it's like, well, of course I do that every day, and I check Twitter, and I am up with the news, and I text my family, and I pray for my family every single day. Like those are all things you do every single day,
right?
But it just doesn't feel like, that's not that important. But for most people, they don't do those things.
No,
every
it's
day.
true. It's true. Because I'll say, when was the last time you read the Bible? And some people are like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And I, even today, got up, read John 7 and 8, and read my proverb of the day, prayed the virtue over my family, prayed for the salvation of all my grandchildren. Like I do that every day. So there's things that I do every day, but I do think, as I was joking around, like there was years ago, Chris Hodges went to Australia and did a conference, and he's the everyday. Like he's at 0600, at 0700, and it doesn't vary even when he's on the road. It's like he's disciplined. And everybody was so overwhelmed with how disciplined. They said, "Is there anyone that is successful that is the opposite of Chris?" And so they said, "Oh yeah, Rob Ketterling."
You
Like
make people feel better about their lack of discipline.
apparently. And I went to the conference and they introduced me as the anti-Chris. And I was like,
Wow, be careful with that one.
I know. I was like, that isn't, but it is true. He's the most disciplined, and I'm disciplined way more than I let on or even know, but I'm not rigid. Like I just really, things are flexible.
Well, I think on this, and when I had Ramsey on here, what, almost 2 years ago now, he talked about how every single day he's over 1,000, a couple thousand days straight now, where he's been walking every day, gets up at 5, does the same thing. And it's these rhythms. And I think that's more of what it is. It's
Yep.
rhythms of life. And I've also noticed, this isn't one on the list, and I'm going to keep moving here. But people are particular. Successful people are particular. They know that matters, and the little things matter. The type of journal you use for your
Correct.
Bible reading, you're particular about that.
I have the journal, and I made my assistant order 5 years worth of that exact
Okay,
paper
see, this is what
journal.
I'm talking about.
And I was like, I want that one. And it was in England. And I had to have them shipped from England. And I wanted those journals. And they were like $30 each. But what happened is I bought them at what was the Magnolia Farms. And they were clearing out of them. I went there with Mom, and I went to the clearance room. I was like bored. Don't tell her that. But I was bored. And I bought this journal. It was so amazing. I bought 3 of them while I used them for 3 years, ran out. But I wanted that exact one. So
That's what I'm talking about.
Heard you
All
good.
right,
All right.
number 2, they prioritize the right things.
They do. And a lot of people like being busy, but successful people want to do the right things and get them done. And the thing that changed me was I bought a Franklin Covey planner years ago, and I never had done this. I make a to-do list, and the first thing is make to-do list because I want to cross it off when I'm done. And I would make a list, and then I would do easy things, and I dread the important things. And the Franklin Covey made you rank it A, B, C.
Is he related to Stephen Covey?
Yes, that's who it is.
It's the same guy?
Yeah.
Why
It
is it
was
called
sold.
Franklin?
It was a company, Franklin and Covey, and I think they merged.
Oh.
So yeah, it was Stephen Covey. There it is. And it was A 1 2 3, B 1 2 3, C 1 2 3. And what I noticed is a lot of times I was crossing off C 1 2 and 3s, avoiding the A's, thinking about getting to the B's. But successful people say, I'm going to attack the thing. And one word of advice I would say to anybody that wants to be successful, ask yourself, what is stopping everyone else around me from moving forward? Get that done right now. You want to be successful? Fix the things that are stopping. Like if everybody's waiting on this report before they can get their B's and C's and everything done, get that report done and make the phone call, return the email, whatever it is, do the important thing first and then get to the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in this list of 10 things that people do, I mean, he has the 7 habits of highly effective people. There's some similarities of some of the things here, but also he has a book that I read called First Things First, which is all about prioritization. So if you struggle with that, I'd encourage you read that book. And it's an older book, but it still applies to today. You know,
absolutely.
Even without all the social media and everything, it probably applies more so today than even it did before. How do you know, like you have that list, you kind of work them out, but how do you know that the things that you're doing are the priority? Like, how do you know that they're really moving the needle? I think sometimes it's what we've always done, and that's just how we do it. Oh, well, this is what I do because that's what we've always done in the church world, in the business world. Well, this is what we do as a company. This is a priority for us.
I haven't thought of it in this way, but this is the first thought that came to me is what is going to keep forward progress, and then what pays the bills? You know, I just think when you look at it, like if this pays the bills and this keeps forward progress, that's what's important to do. And so you better get it done, the things that pay the bills, whether you're in a company, a church, anywhere, like whatever that is, you better get that done. And then what has the forward progress and lets everybody keep moving. And then I would say, what are the things that only you can do? Those are priority. If it's only you can do it, then it's a priority. So that's just my way of looking at it.
Number 3, great leaders are not afraid to fail. They're
Sure.
resilient.
You learn, and I think Maxwell might have said failing forward. Like you fail and then you get up from it and then you learn from it. But this was hard for me. Whenever I failed, I felt like a failure, and I felt rejection and shame and like, I can't believe I failed. And then I realized part of failure was recognizing what I was good at and not good at and stop trying to be all things to all people. And then the other part of failure was, when did I overestimate my abilities, or I didn't understand what it was requiring of me? And so I'd learn. So you get where you're not afraid to fail and you realize it's not final. It's not over. Like, you fail, people fail all the time, and it's not over. It's just, what will they do next? And I'll never forget, we were going through a crisis in the church, and I felt like a failure. And I went and met with an old pastor. I can't remember his name, but I remember it was New Hope Church. Um, and he sat down with me and he said, Rob, he goes, this is life. You're going to get punched in the face by the devil. He's going to knock you down. You get back up and you punch him back. And he goes, you know that little like toy that kids have, that one that like you knock it down and then the weight in the bottle pops it up? He goes, that's how you want to live your life. He goes, life is just going to pop you down and you're just going to come right back up. He goes, that's the way you have to live.
Yeah, that's why I added the word resiliency, because I think that is resilience.
Yes.
Not being afraid to fail is one thing, but actually doing it and failing and then getting back up is how you become resilient. And I think
Yes.
there's a difference between people who say they're not afraid to fail and people who are actually not afraid to fail. The people who say that, they usually don't ever try anything that they're going to fail on. Oh, I'm not afraid to fail, but they don't take risks. Who are some people in your life that you can think of that they're resilient in the face of adversity? They get punched, they get knocked down, they come back up, they get a bad diagnosis, they run into challenges, and it's like, nope, I get back up, I get back up.
I mean, most of the people that I think of right away are all the people that are in church, like members of the church, where I watch them get knocked down and get back up again, and they're just resilient and they keep moving forward. And I'm always amazed that it seems like they don't give up and then they are successful. So that's, I mean, my immediate thing doesn't go to celebrities or like the Abraham Lincoln story, you know what I'm saying, where he failed, he failed, he failed. I mean, my immediate thing is, I think of the people, which they would mean nothing to the people listening to this, where they'd be like, oh, Jim, did it, or Steve did it, but that's where I immediately go to. I'm trying to think, well, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, okay, take somebody that a lot of people know, Mark Batterson. Mark Batterson plants his first church, total failure. Plants his second one, success in Washington, D.C. John Lindell, his first church, womp, zonker, goes to Springfield, amazing, great church. So you see a lot of people that have done stuff like that. But I mean, there's the athletes. I mean, and it's interesting. I remember we had Walter Bond, which means nothing to anybody, but unless they're older. But he played for the Gophers in basketball. And then he had all these seasons in the NBA. And he said, I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the this. I wasn't the best. But I was resilient and I knew what to do. And I ran the play and I overcame the setbacks. And I made, so
Yeah, and there's people with all the talent in the world, but they don't have that resiliency.
correct.
It's like the Mamba mentality they talk about with Kobe. It's like he's like, no, I have the talent, but I'm gonna outwork you anyways.
Yes.
And there's some people who have the talent, but they're not willing to put the work in. And there's other people who it's the tortoise and the hare, and they're like, hey, I may not have been the fastest, but I just never quit.
Ecclesiastes says that the race doesn't always go to the fastest or the swift, but time and chance happens to everybody. It's kind of like there's those moments. If you stay faithful, next thing you know, you're in.
I do think that that's one of the reasons why Trump won the election is like, as much as it was just crazy. I mean, he had all these things. It was like, oh, it's over for him. He got arrested, or
Well, he hasn't been inaugurated yet, has he?
I'm just
We're recording
saying,
this. He hasn't been.
I know, a
teasing.
couple more weeks.
I'm teasing.
But I do think that regardless of politics, there was just this idea of, man, the felony counts like it's over for him, and then he gets shot, and it's like, oh wow, it's over, like he's gonna get killed, and then it's like he kind of lost the first debate, and it was like, oh, the tide is turning, and then it came back, and it was just like this resiliency where people are like, man, this guy's not going away, and
He
he's
does not go
almost
away.
80, So I just think that was
Good example of
I
somebody
heard
resilient.
well, but I heard a lot of people that said that, like, I don't know that I really love that a lot of the things about his rhetoric or whatever, but you got to give it to the guy that when you get shot and you put your fist up and you're like, we're going to fight this. It's like, dang.
It would have been easy after that first assassination attempt to say, calling it a day,
Well, then he goes back to the spot,
elect somebody else.
It's kind of like, if you're going to have your commander in chief, the leader of your army in general, you're like having somebody that's kind of crazy enough to do it. You're like, I don't know. Some people might not like that, but we'll see how it goes the second time around. Number 4 is kind of a part 2 to number 3. They actually learn from their mistakes. Successful people, great leaders, they
Failing
learn from their
forward, like I
mistakes. They
said.
fail forward.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? I feel like you kind of you preemptively answered that one.
No, I mean, I just think of these sayings. Like, I think it was Maxwell again. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And you just have to keep saying, all right, now I know how to not do that. And there's the famous one with Edison. Every time he was trying to make the light bulb, but he's like, well, we now know 792 different ways that the light bulb doesn't work, but we're getting closer.
Don't you think that successful people are aware of that chance that Ecclesiastes talks about? And sometimes in the face of failure, they almost make light of it because they just know that I know I've given it my best effort. I know I've written a good song or I've done whatever. And it's just, we laughed about that during COVID. We launched our Altars album and we had this big tour plan. It was the first ever tour with River Valley Worship that we were going to do. And it was in March of 2020 that we were about to release it. It was like, oh man, we did that with our 25th anniversary. We rented out the convention center and we had this big plan. We're going to bring all the campuses together, 15,000 people in one place. It's going to be amazing. Fly in missionaries from around the world. That was 2020.
Didn't work.
So you just kind of have to laugh about it and say, it wasn't that I failed. It was just the circumstance around me.
It's true.
This is one that I didn't find in any of these lists that I was looking at, but it kind of was a theme. Successful people, great leaders, they're inspired, not intimidated by other people's successes.
I love that.
Well, you're supposed to give your thoughts.
Well, because I immediately went to this. I want to be around great people because have you ever heard that thing like show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. Like I want to be around great people.
Never heard it.
And I want to be challenged by them. I also want to observe greatness. Like I remember I went to the Australian Open tennis and I was so excited because I got to see Serena play. And I just said, she's the best in the world. I watched the way she came into the stadium. I watched the way she warmed up. I felt terrible for the girl she was playing. I thought, she's going to smoke you.
It was like the early rounds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And she just smoked her. And this girl she was playing was about the size of your wife, like very petite, tennis club girl. And I was like, oh, you're getting smoked. And she did. But I was just watching greatness. And I, go to see a NBA game and you're watching greatness and you go to the theater and you see somebody that's the greatest or a musician. Watching the greatest, so it doesn't intimidate me. It makes me appreciate it. And then even being around, because here's the thing, you can learn something around them. If you ask the right questions, you can learn when you're around great people. The worst thing to do is fanboy, and fangirl. That's terrible. The other thing is to talk about yourself all the time. And the other thing is to try to see if you can get any juice out of them, but you're not intimidated by it at all.
It's always fascinating to me being around multiple great leaders at once because often when I was younger, I would, still like to think I'm young, but I host a lot of our guest speakers and I would drive them around. That was just something that was kind of a perk of being, your son is I would get to drive the speaker. I felt like it was an honor, but I'm getting to sit with some really high level leaders. And I would often try to ask them questions, but I found that they were asking me more questions than I was asking them. And I kind of thought as a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, like, man, I'm pretty cool.
I got something to say.
Yeah, I got something to say. And I realized that it's because they're just successful and that's what they do. They want to learn, they ask questions. And I've tried to be that person and they always say if you talk too much, if you think that you talk too much, you probably did. And I always try to be talking less when I'm around great leaders because I want to ask them questions. But when you're around somebody that's another great leader as well, you'll go back and forth on that, and then it'll lead to a great conversation. But you always are around people that they talk about themselves the whole time, and then you're going, huh, wow, they really
There's
talked about themselves. But the ones that are the best, even if they're the top of the top, they're still asking questions. They're still, again, they can learn something from anybody.
sure.
One of the things though that you mentioned Serena, you mentioned athletes, we talked about Kobe, and you think of Brady and all these people that are
Sure.
musicians that are just incredible. And you say, oh, I could never do that. But when it's in your sphere, when it's a preacher or when it's a communicator or when it's a pastor or when it's fill in the blank, someone
Yep.
talking about generosity and giving their opinions on how you should run your church, things that
Sure.
are really in your wheelhouse, I feel like it can be harder to appreciate their success and it does become more intimidating. How have you combated that when it hits a little close to home? You're at a conference and you preached the session, but someone else preached the session that was really good as well. And you kind of feel this bit of like, oh, I don't know. Is that over time you've just learned to not care about that? Or is it still
No, I'm not competing with them, and I mean, maybe other people think they are, but I'm not competing. I'm really on the same team, so I want to learn from them, and then I'm just going to always have the posture of I'm going to try to be a learner. And the hardest part is when you got somebody who doesn't have who maybe got a platform because of connections or you just feel like there's not enough weight behind their platform. That's tough to listen to. But when you see people that you're like, wow, there's weight, there's something here, you're in the mode of, I want to get as much as I can out of this. And it's not intimidating at all. I mean, I remember I sat in on a session at a conference, a breakout session on generosity. And I was there literally like, I wonder what he knows that I don't know. And I sat there like, I say that. I don't, oh, I don't say that. Why did you say that? And so I left with like 3 or 4 things. The other thing is I've learned the value of 1 or 2 amazing things. Like you don't have to walk out of that meeting with somebody with, okay, maybe they're a peer of yours, but I'm not going to try to walk out with 100 good ideas, just 2. If I can walk away with 2, that was worth it. And then the other thing is I've noticed that when you're around greatness or anointing, let's put it in a Christian perspective, when you're around greatness or anointing, that also sparks new thinking in you, and that new thinking creates new ideas. I can't tell you how many times I've been listening to a sermon by somebody, and all of a sudden, oh, it just, it, it's
100%?
not even related to what they were saying, but in that presence of that anointing and that gift, more it like multiplied whatever's on me, and I'm getting good ideas just being around that person.
Yeah, it's
So that's worth it right there.
was just having this conversation right before we recorded in the like last meeting I was in, but you the reason that you grow so much in your master's degree is not because of what you're reading, it's because of the thinking that's changed. It's because
And
of how you see the world. And the I find when I'm reading a book, I think about a million other things, but that book helps me in podcasting.
sure.
How could that
Yep.
book help you there? I just finished reading a book, one of really, really good book, probably one of the best I've read in the past few years. What got you there won't get you there. And I think that's what it's
Keep you
called.
there.
Won't keep you there. What got you here won't keep you there. Won't keep
Or get you
whatever
there.
it's called. You know what I'm saying. What got you there, what got you here won't get you there. Won't keep you there. One of those two. Anyways, I got through that. Um, his point was you can't expect that just because you're a successful person doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sustain that level of success over and over. You look at athletes as a perfect example. You're the best athlete in high school, and now you go to college and you're competing against every one of that high school's best 1 or
Yes.
2 athletes. And then you go from college to the pros, and now the pool of, oh yeah, I was the best athlete in high school. Some people go to college, they barely even start. They might not even
Right.
play a game.
Right.
But they were the number 1 player on their
Sure.
team. And then you go to the NFL. Even if you make it in the NFL, you might get signed to a practice squad to be the best of the best. But in our work life, in our life as pastors, in our life as business leaders, we think, oh, I went to college, I learned what I need to know, and now everything is on the job training. The best athletes in the world have coaches These
Right.
are the best of the best. And they've got, you look at golf like Scotty Scheffler, he's got a swing coach and he's got a this coach and a mental health coach. And I mean, all these different things that
It's
are
true.
helping him because he wants to keep getting better and better. You don't ever hear an athlete say, no, I feel like I'm at the peak and I can't ever
I
get
can't get
better.
better.
Can't get better. No, I'm
No.
trying to get better. I'm trying to get better. Um, this is the one that you actually gave me.
Okay.
Number 6, great leaders acknowledge their Achilles heel. You
Yeah.
said, I feel like great leaders are willing to acknowledge that. Expound on that.
Well, I think you have a weakness that you've got to guard against, whether it's pride or greed, or what is your Achilles heel, or um, I've watched leaders that are incredibly successful. They're terrible with their diet and health. Or I've watched leaders that were incredibly successful have a train wreck of marriage or marriages, and you watch this and you see that's my spot. That's my weakness. It's my fault, and you're aware of it. And I don't know how you better be close to somebody to ask them what their weakness. You know what I mean? It's also funny when they say, "What's your weakness?" People say, "I don't even know what it is." What do you mean you don't know your weakness? Um, so, but to truly get down to the truth of it, you'd probably have to be pretty close to them or it needs to be something that's glaringly obvious where the whole world is seeing your weakness.
But there's a difference between acknowledging it and actually trying to fight against it. Because I mean, some people, well, you've talked about this before in ministry. I'm not going to say to people in my congregation, sometimes it just takes your third wife to get it right.
Right, right,
Or
right.
sometimes you're just a bad dad, but you're a great boss. We don't concede that as
No,
believers to say, well, it's just kind of part of the job. It's being well-rounded. And so you can't just acknowledge it. You actually have to help it. To me, it's acknowledging it to your close friends
right,
and saying, I want you to keep me accountable because naturally I might be a workaholic and might neglect my family, or naturally I might be predisposed to this, or I struggle with alcohol, or I struggle with this type of thing. I need you to help me in areas that I can't do on my own. Like for me, working is not hard. I feel like being a hard worker, I love working. I work all
right.
the time. I need other people to say, hey, you're good. You don't need to be working. But for some people, that's not as easy for them. But again, everyone has different things. I don't struggle with alcohol. I've never, ever struggled with it. I don't ever think about it.
Right.
But to somebody else, it would. So it's, to me, that
I'm
point,
glad I never drank because I think I would have struggled. I do. I think I
because
would have
you're all
struggled.
in.
I'm
Yeah.
all in, and I think I would have got rolling with it, and it would have led to no good.
Well, I'm
So
glad you
I
didn't
avoided.
either.
I avoided an Achilles heel. But also, I would say my Achilles heel is probably that I want to say yes to everything. That I'm trying to almost live 2 days in every day. And that can be an Achilles heel because then that you neglect the things that are important in your life because you're always trying to do the next thing. So that's an Achilles heel for me.
Number 7, which aligns with what you just said, know when to delegate. Great leaders know when to delegate, when they don't have to say yes, when they can have someone else represent them. How have you learned how to know it's okay to delegate? It's okay to say no. Again, as a recovering yes man, we've done that podcast episode last
Yeah.
year or year before. But how do you know when to delegate?
Well, I didn't. I was super pastor until I was 500 people in the church. And I wrote everybody a handwritten anniversary card, birthday card. I did every dedication, every wedding, did it all. And it wasn't until I was burning out that I realized I've got to learn how to delegate. So then I realized God was bringing people around me to use their gifts and talents, and He's wired them to use them. And so you weren't shirking your responsibility by delegating. You were literally setting people free to use their gifts. That was part one. Part two is there are certain things you got to delegate and get off your plate so you can focus on the things that are important. So they know how to delegate and they don't feel bad about it. And I don't know, when you delegate right, when it's not, I think there's a difference between dumping and delegating. Delegating is giving away something that is valuable that needs to be done. Dumping is getting rid of like something that um, is painful that you might even have to do. Remember, I wrote the book, um, Fix It. Whose problem is it? Is it God's, yours, or theirs? When you're delegating, you're literally giving the people their problems to solve. When you're dumping, you're actually taking the things you're supposed to solve and giving it to other people. That's the difference between delegating. But successful people know how to delegate, and they're clear. They don't just give away projects. They're clear. They're clear on what's expected. They're clear on when it's expected by, and they're clear on when for the person to come back to them for help. Because a lot of times I give things away, and I'd probably say my weakest point of delegating is I don't let them know, like, hey, if you get stuck here, here, or here, come back for help. I delegate, get rid of it. They know what's expected and they know when I want it done, but they don't know, like, can I come back to you and get a checkup if I'm stuck? That's probably what I need to work on
Yeah, I
better.
like that differentiation between delegating and dumping work onto people. Another thing that differentiates great leaders from average leaders is they don't wait for work to come to them. They go out and seek it. I think sometimes people, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm waiting for the work to come to me. I'm waiting for someone to assign
Or
it to me.
permission.
Yeah. How have you're a go-getter. You've always seen that, but you've led people who maybe haven't had that. How have you seen people change their mindset or grow them to even be more of, I don't wait for things. Again, it's like I'm going out and I'm hunting.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something. I'm on the offensive. I'm not on the defensive reacting to what's happening in the world. I'm trying to change the world.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, and this would just be me. Again, I'm wired this way, but I'm going to go look for things to get done because I'm not looking for the credit. I'm looking for the accomplishment to be done. So a lot of people are sitting around, well, if I go and do that, will I get the credit? And then if I go do it, it's not my area. And then I'll make that person look good. I'm just looking for the accomplishment. Like, we did that. I got it done. I made it happen. Let's go. And I've learned that you don't always get the credit, but after a while, the credit catches up with the accomplishment. And I think people need to hear that. And because they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I won't get any credit. Well, go do it. Get the accomplishment. Get it done, and be proactive. But it's not. I forget who said do. They said there's people who know what's happened, those who don't know what's happening, and those that make it happen. And I was like, I determined when I heard that statement, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be a guy that makes it happen. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go meet with that person. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go try that. I'm going to be resilient in the failure. I'm going to make it happen. And I will tell you this, it's a lot more fun to try to make it happen than it is to sit around and let it fall on you.
Hmm. Yeah, but it's more responsibility for sure.
It is.
Uh,
But that's why successful people get out and make it happen. They
mhm.
do it. Like, you know,
Yeah, I find that it is much more. It's like an open sandbox, and it's all right. You get to figure it out. You get to go for it. Two more here. Final number 9, number 10.
okay.
Great leaders keep their emotions in check.
That's a good one.
Do you think that's true?
I think it's
Mm.
absolute. Well, yes, in check, but they don't get rid of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say maybe another way to phrase this is great leaders share appropriate emotion. They
Yeah.
they don't fly off the handle.
Yeah.
They don't blow up at people. They
Because there's some emotions that are contagious and people love, like joy. And
yeah.
there's some, like, I love joy. And I mean, I have that emotional effect. Like,
Yeah, when you walk around the office, what are we doing?
and
You're bringing
I got
joy.
emotion that's joy. But I also learned that I had to keep my emotions in check when I didn't like something, because I'd say, I hate that. And they're like, whoa, you hate it? Like, if you hate's a pretty strong thing. Like, if you hate it, we're never going to do that again.
Yeah, you can
And
live in the extremes of like, this is the best thing we've ever done versus like, this is the worst thing we've ever
so I
done.
had to learn to keep that in check. And then I also had to learn, like, I'd be a terrible poker player. I would be.
You'd get ace king and you just have a big smirk on your face.
I know. They'd be like, well, we're folding because he's smirking. So
You'd
he
go
has,
all in right away.
I would just have to come up with some, like, I always smile, but maybe I should just not play poker. But I would be terrible because I can't keep them in check like that. But for me personally, I had to keep anger in check. It was an emotion that was out of control. And I remember I lost it on one of the staff. I can't even remember what staff member it was, but I lost it and got angry. And I was meeting with Sam Chan, and he says, never do that again. And he goes, it's out of control. You better get that under control or you won't be a great leader. And I just was like, whoa. I was like, I didn't commit adultery. I just, like, lost it on somebody in anger. And he looks at me because he could tell what I was thinking. And he goes, "Why didn't Moses get to go into the promised land?" He goes, "Did he commit adultery? Did he kill somebody?" And he goes, "In his anger, he struck the rock when he was supposed to speak to it. He disobeyed God, and his emotion of anger caused him to get so angry at the people that he disobeyed God, struck the rock, and didn't go to the promised land." And he goes, "You better get your anger under control." Ooh. So successful leaders use their emotions to their strength, understand the power of momentum, emotion, lift. Cheerful heart is good like a medicine, a wounded spirit who can bear. I mean, there's a lot of proverbs that talk about this, but they also know that there's emotions that can be unhealthy and they better get them under control or they're not going to be a great leader.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Sam Chan's a great reminder of a lot of those leadership
It's
advices.
true.
The last one here is maybe one that seems a bit obvious to some, but I feel like it doesn't always play itself out well. But great leaders, the thing that differentiates the great leaders and average ones is they have a clear definition of success, both in short term and in long term. I think sometimes people think, oh, I can come up with long term goals, but they don't know when to know they're successful along the way. Like great leaders know I had a good week.
Yep.
I had a good month. I had a good day. Great leaders
They
can
know how to
think
keep
that way.
score.
Exactly. Versus, oh, you show up to work one day and oh, sales are down, or oh, attendance is down, and oh, attendance is down this 2 weeks in a row. Well, no, I know that I just implemented the strategy that's going to make those changes, and it's going to take some time. But I had a good week. I moved forward. I did the right things at the right time. But then the same side, some people are only so focused on the week that they don't care too much about the long. Oh, I know attendance has been going down for the last 2, 3 years, but we're doing great things. It's all, well, eventually it becomes a
It catches
pattern
up.
and it catches up to you. How have you focused on knowing that I'm doing the right things right now, that this is a successful month, it is a successful week, it is a successful year, even if my long-term goals, I'm not seeing them yet. And then how have you worked to address maybe it's not as great in the short term as I thought, and I need to reshift the long-term vision?
Um, I read people on the short term. Like, is what I'm getting done right now, are they also celebrating in the wins? That helps me to see if I'm doing the right thing. Um, but I'm able to see what a win is. And I don't know. To me, I'm working. We're working on a 30-year plan right now. I don't know if people know that, but we're actually working on a long-term 30-year plan because I was only looking at a 10-year plan because I was kind of like, hey, at 69, I'm going to be like probably either retired or close to it, so I'll have a 10-year plan. And I felt God speak to me, get a 30-year plan, and He said, what you're going to do in having a 30-year plan, everyone will know what the win is. And when everybody knows a 30-year plan of wins, it's going to enable them to work on plans that they are winning this year. We'll have systematic, this will lead to this, will lead to this, will lead to this, but also we'll have opportunities that might come forward that a year 12 thing shows itself in year 7, and it's a great opportunity. And we could go ahead and jump ahead and grab that win and pull it forward. So having it charted out, having it written down, having it shareable, has all helped me on the long term. And on the short term, it's the emotional feedback of the people I'm working with, the people that I'm around, my family. That's been my thing, as well as to-do list, checklist. I mean, there's something still within me that gets excited when I get all these things done, and then setting the goals and having all those things in place, which now I have a whole new set of goals for this year, and books I'm going to read. So I see the wins there. I think the hardest thing for me is the things I don't control to get those things done. Like, I have goals in this and I don't control it all. There's other factors, there's other people, there's other return phone calls that have to come back to me. Financing, there's this, there's miracles. And I think the hardest thing for me is I'm pressing forward in daily wins, and weekly wins, yearly wins that I want to turn into decades of wins, that I want to turn into legacy of wins. But I know what a win is. and I know when I'm winning and when I'm not winning. It's almost like you know it when you feel it. You know, when I wrote with the speed of unity, you know it when you feel it. You know when you're winning, and a successful leader feels it. And when they don't, they're like, this doesn't feel right. We are not winning. We need to tweak. We gotta, something needs to change. So
Well, that's my list of 10. Is there anything that you thought, oh, that's a glaring thing that you're missing? I know there's,
no, because you had 10, I was just flowing with it. And all of them seem to encapsulate part of what I've heard on whether it's 7 things, 10
yeah, I
things,
took it from a lot of
whatever,
different lists, but I
you
was trying to
know,
think specifically in things in ministry and things that would relate to people that are, I mean, they're starting off the year. And I think a lot of people are at this point in their year where they're, a few days in and they're thinking, how do I grow? How do I get better? There's something about year transitions for most people that, why do you see gym memberships that go way up in January? It's New Year's resolutions.
right.
People that they turn the page, they change the year and they think, how can I become better?
Yeah.
We even listen in podcasting. January, February are really high listening months, and you look at
Because everybody's like, I'm going to listen to 20 podcasts a
yeah,
month.
and November and December, it's people start lagging, the holidays start happening, so people kind of come back like, okay, what did I miss? Where am I at? Let's go, let's become better. What would be your encouragement to those that are looking at this? They see some areas of deficiency or growth. What would be your encouragement to pastors, church leaders, nonprofit leaders, people that are listening to this podcast as to how they can grow and become better leaders this year in 2025?
Well, the biggest thing I would say is it doesn't happen by accident. You have to be intentional. So that'd be my biggest encouragement. Be intentional about looking at that and growing in that list and saying, I want to do this. I want to be better at this. How am I going to improve this? And it's not like, don't go to the end line. Give yourself one step. I'm going to read a book. Like you mentioned a book. Okay.
We couldn't figure out the title, but
Think and Grow Rich or something. No, I'm just kidding. It was not that. I can't even remember what the title was, but
I'll
you
pull it up.
mentioned it. But you should post it on this with the
It's on my
podcast.
Audible. I just
Yeah.
just finished it.
What got you there won't keep you there.
It
Or what
is
got you there won't get you there.
what got you here won't get you there. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, I knew it wasn't about keeping. You can't write a book like that.
No.
So my first thing is be intentional, take actionable steps. Don't just put wish list things out there like, I'm going to be an amazing father. Well, how are you going to do it? So give yourself, be intentional. And then the second thing, this is a warning, and I thought about this to end this, is don't be amazing somewhere and then be disaster somewhere else. Like, don't be an amazing producer at work and a disaster in your family, or don't be amazing. You know what I'm saying? I'll never forget this when your mom was working at a company. I won't say it because I don't want to get in trouble. But when she was working at this company, and the guy won Employee of the Year, and everybody claps like, he's the greatest. He's been here all these hours. He's amazing, and he wins it. And this is what he said in his acceptance speech. He goes, "I was here for the company a lot this year." He goes, "But unfortunately, I've lost my marriage this year. My kids don't." This, and he just womp womp the whole thing. And it was like, wow, he was on a scale of 1 to 10, he was an 11 at work. And he gets up there and says, I was like a 4 or a 3 or a 2 as a husband, as a dad, as everything. And he's like, I was amazing. So my thing is pursue this, be like a successful, driven, motivated, but don't be driven here and lose here. And it's too important to lose the things that really matter, because one of my number one success things that I think in my back of my mind is I want my family to, at my funeral someday, be like, wow, he was amazing to us. He mattered. We're going to miss him like crazy. We love him. He made us better. Like, I was successful there, because that's what's going to matter. So just
Yeah.
don't lose it.
Yeah, I've had friends and friends of friends who parents are incredibly wealthy, have so much, have been so successful in their career, and yet they don't want to talk to their parents. They want nothing to do with them.
Yep.
I don't want your wealth. I don't want your money. I don't want anything because you weren't there for me. And I think it goes to show that stuff doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Most people, if not all, would rather have a present parent than a successful one at work. They would
Yep.
rather have somebody who's there for them. And especially in ministry, how many people in ministry, they're, oh, big church, big this. and their kids don't want anything to do with them.
know.
That was one of the topics that I want to talk about this year. How do you raise kids that love Jesus but don't hate the church? And I think that's a topic that, again, we'll get into. And
I'll interview you
we'll see.
and your brother, and I'll say what
we
happened?
did one. We did one last year
Yeah,
with
I
Mom,
know.
and that was good. But I want to keep expounding on it.
So
But,
be intentional, and then don't lose it in what's really important.
well, thanks for starting off Talking Church in 2025 with this, and we will have you back soon.
Sounds good.